Kia ora, good morning. Quick little podcast here just to explain a couple of things that I've been looking out for. As you know, I've been looking for cases to investigate for when I get out of here from a show, from a podcast, from a radio station, all that sort of thing. And of course, I'm doing a lot of research into cases, and I'm just finding ones. This one I'm going to lump together. Because it's all pretty much the same thing, just told in three different incidences spanned across, from like the 1920s up until like the 80s and stuff, but it is all pretty much the same thing, and you know what I'm going to say. But I'm talking about the Babendum entity, the Sandown clown, and the incident on Bluestone Walk. I'm going to basically just say that what people need to understand, especially because when you're talking about the United Kingdom and Lancashire, Yorkshire, anywhere around that area where we know for a fact that they were messing around with alien spacecraft and, pretending that there are UFOs and testing out their drones. Remember I said that the history of drones goes back to 1849. Direct energy weapons have been around since the 1890s because of Nikola Tesla. That's all what he was working on. And so they were using his technology, especially in the United Kingdom and America and that, because they had the money to do it, to look into aircraft. And basically, when you're talking about the Babendum entity or the Michelin Man and what happened on Bluestone Walk as well, you need to take note of any incident where they see bright lights and the people were unable to move, where they were perfectly conscious but they were unable to move, or they were given the sensation of feeling like they weren't in control of their body and then they fell asleep. That's the direct result of energy weapons. And so any incident where you read about these strange aircraft, these aliens, these strange ghost-like figures, because you look at the Skinwalker Ranch as well, they tested a lot of weapons on that family that made them hallucinate, that made them see things that weren't there, that made them even see like entity. They thought they were stepping out of like portals in the air and that, but it's all direct energy weapons, because you have to understand with these weapons, they can use like radio transmitters and nowadays broadband and satellites and that to make you think what they want you to think. They can literally put thoughts and emotions and memories in your head that aren't real. And they test them out on the public. And it's usually either people of like significant standing, like it was a general, it was a police officer, it was, like a pilot, who will have the experience and report the incident, because it's like, why would they lie? Like, like they're people of good standing, or they're completely innocent people, like children, and, the housewife just minding her own business and that. The Babendum entity is clearly, the quote unquote Michelin Man. Obviously, the reason why they refer to him as the Michelin Man is because he's one of the most iconic advertising characters in the world. Everybody knows the Michelin Man. And so obviously the only way they can describe what the Babendum Man looked like to anyone who would understand it is to say he looked like the Michelin Man. But it's obvious that they were wearing, like cosmonaut suits, like they were testing craft and flying craft and their cosmonaut suits. You have to understand Project Bluebeam has been put into place since the Renaissance period, which is why you see UFOs in that, in Da Vinci's paintings and that. He was even working on helicopters and flying craft himself. He invented the tank, and if you have a look at Da Vinci's invention of the tank, it looks very similar to modern day spacecraft. And I think that, well, modern day, I say 50s and 60s really, looks like it looks like a UFO. So you have to understand that they've been trying to put all of this in place for a very, very, very long time. And they were testing out their suits. Clearly, they were testing out suits and stuff. A lot of this happened in the run up to them wanting to go to the moon, or tricking people into thinking they were going to the moon. They probably genuinely really did want to go to the moon, but something obviously went awry somewhere. But it sounds like it sounds like those suits, and with the clear helmets, and they had antenna on them, and they had little pouches and stuff on them that probably were helping them breathe, pumping oxygen into the masks and that, so they could breathe, like olden day scuba diving equipment. Remember in the old days when they used to like have those heavy boots with the big like brass helmet on, and remember like back in the day, yeah, it sounds like it was they were trying out tech for spacesuits, for going into space, like suits for something definitely. And then obviously because a lot of UFOs and that were seen around the time as well. Yeah, it sounds like it was all to do with space training, military training, and testing drones, testing equipment, and Project Bluebeam. The interesting thing with the Sandown clown, though, hang on, I'm just going to have a sip of my coffee. On the Isle of Wight, as soon as he started talking, I knew exactly what it was. They were the Royal Engineers. They have military base there. It sounds like he was the man that the kids walked upon under the bridge. It sounds like they startled him, which is why he dropped the book and was having trouble picking it up in the water, because it sounds like he was doing some sort of subaquatic training for going under the water. Because then, of course, later on, though the submarine was seen under the water with the eyes, they said it looked like some sort of weird alien craft with the big glowing eyes, and was under the water, and the water was shaking and all of that. They were testing out some sort of submarine. They were testing out some sort of subaquatic submarine, submersible, and these kids walked upon Sandown Sam while he was testing his his what would you call it, suit, underwater suit, his like the olden day scuba diver. It sounds like, even when you look at the drawing of it, and that, it sounds exactly like they're testing out some sort of modern day subaquatic scuba diving gear, like in case he has to climb out of the submersible, because like he was seen first, and then they saw this weird thing under the water, which back in those days they wouldn't have had a clue what any of that stuff was, because it all appealed to the sci-fi mind and the strange and unexplained and all that, which is exactly what the military and government like to use, like psychological warfare, to make you think certain things, so that nobody asks questions. And it sounds like while he was testing out his gear under the water, under the bridge in the water, the kids happened upon him and startled him, which is why he dropped his training manual and had trouble getting it out of the water because he had those special gloves on and stuff. I thought he dealt with it really well, and it sounds like he was either told, this is what you tell them if anyone finds you, or he made it up ad hoc, which I thought was actually pretty cute. And the red berries are obviously some sort of pellets that they feed into their helmets, and that to help give them oxygen, help it will do something. I haven't looked into what these red pellets could be, but it sounds like, putting them into his ear and going into the eye of his thing and then out of his mouth. It sounds like it was some sort of, to convert the air into breathable oxygen for him for his mask, or something to do with because he's out of the water. I don't know. I'm not looking into that side of it. They will have had things that it would have been to help him breathe while he was in his helmet, because staying in those helmets and that for long periods of time is going to have an issue, especially on the mind. And so it sounds like the kid stumbled across some sort of military exercise. And when I looked into the history of the Isle of Wight, their military bases and that there, they do have the Royal Engineers have a submarine mining school there. There is a training school there. The Canadian Navy also did training there around about the same kind of time as a lot of the Sandown stuff and that. So I'll put links in the description box below. So the Babendum entity and the Bluestone Walk entity is all to do with them testing their drones, Project Bluebeam, testing out all their direct energy weapons and all of that on the public to fool them into thinking it was aliens, so they could pull off Project Bluebeam while testing out their drones and stuff. Because obviously, fast forward 2025, with the influx of UFOs that we're seeing and all these strange light anomalies in the sky, that's what they were all testing for back then to pull off now. And because I was always told that when they try to wheel out the aliens and the alien invasion and all of that, it's because it's the elite's last-ditch attempt to try and control man when they know they no longer have control over the masses. But the thing is, when you look at the stuff on social media where they're trying to say this scientist said that and NASA have said this and this one's this many days away and blah, 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 everybody in the comments is like, yeah, nah, it's just Project Bluebeam. So everybody's waking up to it now. It's only the easily impressionable. Now, when I did my study into direct energy weapons, one of the things I found is that the people who are most susceptible to the effects of the manipulation of the Schumann resonance, which they use in their energy weapons, a lot of them are vaccinated. So people who follow the herd, they're easily impressionable. The people who don't question their government, they just follow the herd, the lemmings. Yeah, that was very interesting. So yeah, so all of that leading up from Da Vinci's UFO paintings right up until the Babenda Man and all of that is all for the purposes of what they're trying to pull off now with Project Bluebeam. Now, with the Sandown clown, military training for subaquatic equipment and submarines and the scuba gear. That's exactly what that was, which I thought the way the man handled it was was very cute. As a military brat myself, I can completely understand and appreciate the fact why they have to pull off certain things in order to protect themselves and their technology and the public as well. I think the way they handle these things with the public when they're happened upon is very politely done, because like I keep stating, they could make people vanish and disappear and all that, but they don't. They let people spread the myth, because it keeps people away from the area. And then if it does draw people to investigate, and that they know what to do. Except nowadays, people who go investigate these ancient claims, they're no longer doing the projects, they're no longer doing their training and testing, and they've moved on. So any experiences people have there is completely psychosomatic and paranormal, because, as I keep saying, the paranormal is in your head. Because you want to experience something, you will experience something. You manifest the experience because you're wanting it. Or if they are still ongoing, they just let the myth carry forward, because it keeps people far enough away that they don't go butting their nose into things that could otherwise be dangerous, not just for national security, but for the security of the people and the towns and the villages and all of that they're working around. Because obviously when it comes to national defence and that sort of thing, they can't just go publicising everything they're working on. Not that a lot of the stuff that they work on is good. We should not be making weapons of war to hurt people at all, like at all. But it does happen. And as a military brat, I know how my father raised me to respect the military and the things that they do, because I know my dad was doing things as a Royal Engineer that how do I say this? My father was a New Zealand Royal Engineer, Star Major. He was a warrant officer, and he was involved in things with the army that, as in the army, he shouldn't have been involved in with other military, like Air Force, Navy, that sort of thing. I know that for a fact. I have spent pretty much my whole life trying to figure out what he was up to, even asking other people, and basically just being told it's probably best you shouldn't ask questions. As well as the fact that my dad joined and passed his SAS training twice, but never went on to become a SAS soldier. And we don't know why he passed it twice and never continued on. All we can think is that Mum said he wasn't allowed to. So my dad, as a Royal Engineer, was involved in things that weren't, because what does a Royal Engineer do? My dad used to say we build roads for people, and we put bridges up so that military vehicles can go across them, and we drill holes for waters for villages and stuff, which is, in parentheses, why he was in the Solomon Islands at that time during the Civil War. So my dad was involved in things in the army that he shouldn't have been involved in being in the army, but he was. And now that I know about this, that the Royal Engineers were involved in a submarine mining training thing on the Isle of Wight, and that, now I'm thinking, what on earth was my father doing? And I may never know, save for the fact as well, they said no, it was just merely coincidence that when my dad died, and he got his, he died after he got out of the army, because he did regulars and then territorials. There was the Air Force at the Ohakia Air Base flew over, and when we all were like, why is the Air Force flying over? Oh, no, it was just coincidence. 3 Air Force planes flew over my dad's grave as it was going in the ground, as his coffin was going in the ground, at the same time that they were, the gun salute. They fired the guns, and, he got the flag hoisted up and everything, when he wasn't in the army. And when we looked into it, we were told, oh, no, it was just a coincidence. Nah, don't ask questions. So we didn't, we stopped asking questions because it's like things that make you go, my dad was doing stuff that I'm probably never, ever, ever gonna find out about. But my dad was more than just a royal engineer. He was more than just an army man what built roads and gave people water to drink, if you know what I mean. So, but now that I'm doing all these investigations, it's like, well, yeah, okay. And especially because of the fact that he was very adamant when it came to that lot up there that they were not anything like what we know them to be here. He made sure that I understood fully that what we know them to be and who they actually are two completely different things. My father was very much about duty and honour. Nothing made him prouder than serving his queen. He loved Queen Elizabeth so much. He loved her so much, and I'm proud to say that when he died, I got his insignia with her QE2 on his badge and all of that. So I've got all of that here, and he was very, very proud of serving his queen and her army. And he was a stickler for the rules. He was a everything by the book kind of man. So, he kept secrets, he kept things undercover, he would not divulge anything, but there were some things that he made sure I knew going into these investigations and stuff, that I knew the truth, the difference between what man was involved in and what had nothing to do with us. He made sure that I knew the difference from a very young age when he was teaching me to do these investigations. He was a stickler for the rules. He was very, very military. Over 34 years. I mean, when we used to make our beds and tidy our rooms and that, he used to come in and bounce coins off the bed. And if the coin bounced, we were fine, but if the coin didn't bounce, he'd make us strip it and make it again. So he was very, very regimented and, very back and forth, stickler for the rules, and everything was on time and had to be on point and noted down and, and written down and date stamped and timed, and everything had to be documented and written perfectly. His reports, I used to have to iron his uniforms and I polished his boots. He didn't even like my mum ironing his uniforms. He liked the way I did it. He taught me how to iron his uniforms, and then when his uniforms needed ironing, it was me that ironed his uniforms. He liked the way I did it, and he liked the way I polished his boots. I could make a fortune polishing military boots, I'm telling you now. Even my ex used to let me polish his boots because he said nobody polishes boots better than I did. And I have them mofo sparkling like diamonds, So yeah, because of my dad, because he said it was, he was teaching me discipline and not being regimented, but he was teaching me discipline and how do I explain it? He was teaching me to pay attention to detail, discipline and paying attention to detail. Because I swear that man, well, I mean, now that I know I was part of a government experiment, I'm wondering, was he involved? Was it a military thing as well? It must have been, because with me, he got me to do things that the other six siblings didn't do, and he made sure he would bring books to me that had, because you have to remember as well, was we only had like 2 TV channels. There was no video recorders or anything like that. We still had to go to libraries, and my dad had shelves full of books of unsolved mysteries and all sorts of things, you know. And he would bring things to me and say, read this and tell me what you see. Not tell me what you think, tell me what you see. And I'll never ever forget, he got me to work on, he bought me this book and he sat me down and he said, tell me what you see. And I can't remember the names or the cases or anything like that, but it was a whole pile of unsolved murders around the world. And there was this case in Germany where a man's body was found by the door of his apartment, and nobody had gotten in, nobody had gotten out, like they couldn't find out how he died, blah, blah, blah. And he said to me, tell me what you see. And I remember saying, I can see this man, he's doing this, he's blah, 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 yada, yada, you know, and describing it all to him. And he just smiled and he just patted me on the shoulder and he said, good girl. And that was it. And I remember thinking, huh? But then, of course, years later, this is when I was a teenager, in my early teens, and then, of course, years later, I do these investigations and stuff using quantum magnetics by telling you what I see, but not like psychically, because I was saying, I remember I was saying, I'm standing looking down over the man's body, but when I walked to the room on the left, I remember saying, like, it was so long ago. I just remember it was in Germany. The man's body was found by the door, but they don't know how the killer got in or out. Like they were saying it wasn't possible, but that the killer got in and out. But I said to him, if you go, I said, I'm standing over his body. I said, and when you walked through the door on the left, there was like a, was there like a, I can't remember, God, it was so long ago. There was something in the room on the left under the floorboards, like when you could lift the floorboards up, and there was like a stairwell or something like that. And I remember saying to him, it was one of his neighbours. It was somebody that lived in the apartment building, and they got in through a stairwell. And I distinctly remember saying to him, it may have been put there during the war, you know, to hide Jews or something. And that's when he patted me on the shoulder and he said, good girl. But there was no mention in this case about there being like a pretend floor, like a manhole kind of thing. It could have been a priest hole, but I said to him, because it was Germany, they may have hidden Jews there. They were able to get in and out through this like passageway under the floor or something like that, and but it specifically led, you know, to the neighbour. I said it was the neighbour that did it, and they got in through, you know, got in and out through the floorboard. They could have waited. I was saying, you know, and I was describing it all, because people were trying to say like the window was too small for them, for the killer to have gotten in and out, and they didn't have a key and they didn't have this, you know, blah blah blah. And so my dad came to me and he said, I want you to read this and tell me what you see, because he knew, he must have known from when I was really really little that I could see things I couldn't see. And when we were in Whakarewarewa and he saw that Māori battle, and he was describing the battle and everything, and Mum was telling my sister and I, we were talking about it a few weeks ago. She remembers it just as well as I did. That's when I knew that my dad could time jump. And I think he knew I could time jump too. And so he trained me to hone my skills, because he was too scared of his skills. He was too scared to go near what he was, because he didn't understand it. Because remember I said the other day, he didn't like nuns. He said they were vicious and nasty and bitter. He went to Catholic school and his nuns were his teachers in that. And being Catholic, the paranormal and the supernatural was only God and the devil, and that was it. And everything else you didn't talk about. It was taboo. And he used to get beaten and whipped and tortured, brutally tortured by these nuns and that. if he exhibited any signs of any sort of special tendencies towards God and the supernatural and the paranormal. And I think he protected me from that, especially if I was being used as some sort of experiment. So, yeah. So I know a little bit about this stuff, but I also know enough about it that it's not the sort of thing that even I would want to delve into deeply, because of the way that my father taught me to respect the military and their protocols and the things that they get up to. Sometimes it's not good for people to go snooping around. So I know how to do enough to let people know that you need to understand the truth and know the truth, because it's not healthy to believe that these things are aliens or cryptids or anything like that. It's what they want you to believe. If if it involves lights and aliens and men in weird costumes and holographic illusions, because you have to remember holograms, they were using holograms in the 60s and that as well. And it sounds like with the Bluestone Walk lady, it was a bit of hologram, costumery, DEW, direct energy weapon kind of tech going on while they were testing out some stuff and trying to put Project Bluebeam in place. It sounds like people are too easily led into things that aren't healthy for them to believe in. So I'm giving you enough to be able to fill in the blanks so that you can put a tick next to it to go, so that's what that was, and then just leave it at that and move on, okay? So I'll put the links in the description box below, but now you know. Logic, doubt, reason, common sense, and compromise are all what governs your subconscious mind, and your subconscious mind is your psychological mind. You have to think logically and with reason, and always go to logic, doubt, and reason first. If it doesn't make sense to you, especially back in those days in the 1920s, and when they were first messing around with all the stuff that Nikola Tesla had been inventing and that for them, they were using technology at a time where people didn't have a frigging clue, as well as then by the time movies came about with Metropolis and the 1940s, it came from outer space and Men from Mars and all of that. It was all to set you up psychologically as part of their psychological implementation or psychological warfare to set you up for Project Bluebeam. I can tell you here and now, they're nothing like what we're led to believe they are. The real ones, when the time comes, when the world is actually ready to be introduced to the real ones, you're going to look at what you've been believing for the last 100 years and go, oh my God, that's so embarrassing. How did we fall for it? They want you to believe that it's unexplained and mysterious so that you don't question, especially with Project Bluebeam, the nefariousness of what it is that they're trying to pull off. But in the case of the Sandown clown, I just think that that poor man got busted testing out his scuba, his underwater gear, before they tested out the subaquatic submarine. So, yeah, I'm just lumping it all together because it's easier to do it like this than to just do 3 separate videos. So I'll put links in the description box below. That shrouded hand man, I just adore him. He's so funny. He's so funny. I stumbled upon his channel completely by accident. And yeah, I love him. I love his show. So I can't wait to get my co-host and get out on the road and start going around the world and explaining a lot of what this is to people so that they are no longer afraid. because it's not healthy to believe things that aren't true and then passing that on to cause, you know, mass confusion, mass hysteria, mass illusion, because it does happen. So it is very, very possible to do it. So, yeah, I'm going to finish my coffee. Have a wonderful day. Ka kite anō. Mwah.